I won't spit
Hi,
on the
everybody, and
screen.
welcome to another episode of Utterly Unscripted. Today, I'm joined by Claudia Monacelli. Hi, Claudia. Thanks for being with us.
Hello, Jesse. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I had to read your name because I, ever since I found you and I invited you to come onto the podcast, I have been saying, "Oh, I'm going to be talking to Claudia Monacelli."
Yes, and you pronounce it so well, better than my father.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. It's not Claudia, is it? Or, well, you
Yes,
live
it
in
is
Italy.
Claudia. Well, I
Claudia.
live in Italy.
Okay.
It's always Claudia. But even in the
Yeah.
United States, because half of my life was spent in the United States, my dad would call me Claudia, Claudia, and my friends Claudia, Claudia, and I hated that sound, Claudia, Claudia.
Claudia.
Yeah.
You were born in the US?
Mm.
No.
9. My both of my parents are Italian, and
Okay.
I was 5 months old when they decided to move to the United States. So vroom, we went there, and
Wow.
so you have this situation where my sisters and I spoke English to each other, and they spoke Italian to us, and then so this was the kind of, and so out of our house, the smell of homemade pizza would bring all the kids on the block into to our doorstep. Yes. So the
Beautiful.
first half was in the United States, and then I moved here.
I'm
Yeah.
deeply, deeply familiar with the immigrant family dynamic. I
Yeah.
have an Italian well, he's no longer with us, but I have an Italian grandfather and I have a Dutch grandmother from my
Mm,
mum's
what a
side.
combination. Hmm.
It is a combination. And then on my dad's side, both Dutch grandparents. So
Uh-huh.
I'm absolutely 100% familiar with the immigrant lifestyle. That
Yeah.
it's very different to someone who is born and raised and knows nothing more than the
Yeah.
culture that they're born into.
Well,
Can you tell us?
I'm wondering, Jesse, as you say that, I'm wondering to myself, that exists? I mean,
Yeah.
today, you mean there are
Yeah.
no people who figured that there's more than one culture, in the same
Come to
person?
Australia.
Oh, no, but even in Australia, that's what I would think, more
Yeah.
than anything, more than the United States.
You would think
Yeah, I
that,
would
but
think.
we have a
Mhm.
huge culture of people here who believe that they how do I say it I don't know how to say it in a way that will I don't know, I'll probably get canceled for this too.
Just
But yeah,
say it.
there's a whole lot of racist bullshit in Australia.
Oh,
Um,
mhm.
it's actually one of the reasons that I decided to do the podcast because I was being bombarded
Yeah.
by racist crap every day and from these
In what
people who
form? Do
think,
you mind me asking you? Was it just
yeah,
comments, passing in the passing comments that would be
in
made about other
general,
people, or were they
yeah,
face on threats to you, or
not
was it
particularly to
meant?
me.
Ah, okay,
Not
okay.
particularly to me that the age of well, back when my grandfather moved to Australia,
Uh huh.
they were they were wogs. That's what Australians called
Oh,
Italians,
I
wogs.
see. I
And that
see.
is a Western Oriental gentleman. That is what
Oh,
the acronym is
uh
standing
huh.
for. Oh, so I've
Interesting.
been led to believe. There
Uh
was a
huh.
huge influx of Italian, let's say European generally,
Yeah.
immigrants to Australia, especially
Uh
after
huh.
World War II.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those things. People needed to go and find a new way of life and
Mm-hmm.
feed their families and do the
Right.
right thing by their
Sure.
families.
Sure.
So there are not a lot of people around anymore who remember that.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
grandparents are in their 90s now. So,
Oh,
those people
God
who
bless
came
them.
here to
Mm-hmm.
Australia, they're dying. They're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
here to
Sure.
tell the stories anymore,
Of
but
course.
they were the people who were bearing the brunt of the racism here in Australia.
Sure.
White
Sure.
people in general feel that they are supreme in
Mhm,
Australia,
mhm.
and they tend to what's that word?
Well,
Like
I
they project
yeah,
this whiteness out.
yeah, I see this. I can give you, say, a mirror of what it was like. It's quite different in the United States. Of course,
Yeah,
racism is all over, right?
of
But
course.
what happens for wogs? What you call wogs? We
It's
were
really not a nice
Italian.
word to say,
No,
Claudia. It's
I
not a
know, but
nice.
it's kind of cute. I like the Western. I love that.
Yeah.
But what happens? Of course, I'm first generation, right? Immigrant.
Mm,
What happens when I start growing up and I go to high school, I go to college? In that
mm,
brief span of time, the Italians are taken off of they go up to the first level of immigrants. They're off. They are
Mhm.
like US citizens. Italians today are not
Mm.
considered Italians. They are Americans, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They were supplanted by Hispanics. And so the
Yes.
Hispanics, took our place. And so there are no longer any there's probably not even Italian Americans who know how to speak Italian anymore. But so
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that the scales, it seems that the original, let's say American, if you could say original, they always find a target that's different. As soon as
Mhm.
one becomes either, uh, 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 like Italians got into law, judges in the legal profession, and
Yeah,
as soon as
yeah.
they start getting good jobs, they come off of that list. And
Off
so
the
now we
list.
have,
Yeah,
yeah, off the
yeah.
list. And of course, when I think of Hispanics, I don't know when they're going to get off the list, because the Hispanics just run the gamut of, the
Yeah.
Caribbean, you never know
No,
where
exactly.
they're from. So, well,
In
now we've
Australia,
finished speaking about, no,
I
go
was just
on.
going to say in Australia, so we don't have the Hispanic thing. So the
Mm,
Italians came off the
I
list
see.
and
I
made
see.
way for Vietnamese,
Oh, okay,
Chinese,
right, and
because of
that's
where
right.
we are, our
Of course,
proximity to Southeast Asia. And that
right.
hasn't changed, except
Mm,
that now the Asians or the Southeast Asian population have moved, like you said, further up the list,
up the
and they
list,
have
yeah.
made way for the Africans and the
Ah,
Middle Eastern type
uh-huh.
of cultures moving to Australia because they're
Right,
all escaping war. Now we have
right, sure.
Ukrainians. I think we had a few hundred
Yeah.
thousand Ukrainians come to Australia. So
Yeah.
and like you said, they just make way then for the next
Of
lot of
course, for
people.
the
And
next
why though
generation.
do these white people project this crap onto other? I hate it.
Well,
I feel
wait a
so
minute. Now,
uncomfortable.
in the United States, it's no longer the white people who are
It's not the white
projecting,
people.
because it's white and gray and black, and they've
Yeah.
become, different colors already, but they're still projecting. So
It's
you
still
do need
projecting.
another. You need the other. That's part of life that will never go away.
No, I
I can
guess.
safely say that, because that's part of life. It's like
Yes, yeah.
life and death. You don't know what life is like unless you have experienced death, and vice versa. I mean, they coexist. That's
Yeah.
the nature of what goes
It's
up,
just
what
the
comes
nature.
down. Yes, the nature of
Yeah,
things.
yeah, absolutely. I guess I know that we all have these biases. We've all got a bias of some description. I can't say
Right.
that I'm innocent of
Right.
that.
No,
We
obviously.
all
Yeah.
have it.
Sure.
We all, but I think we all need to check ourselves a little bit
Yeah. Sure.
before we
Sure.
just spout it all out into the world. Maybe that negative
Sure.
energy
Sure.
that we
Sure.
keep putting out
Yeah.
there, and
Yeah.
or stand up for people and
Sure.
actually have a voice and call out that stuff. If you
Yes.
see someone
I
who's
was
being particularly vicious.
I'm laughing because I guess it was a week ago. I was on an interview, and with two psychics. I myself am a psychic, and we were talking.
Mhm.
And there's nothing better than get psychics together, because they think, oh my god, a person after my own heart.
Uh-huh.
And at one point, I was telling a story about what had happened. She says, and the woman was started laughing. Megan was her name, and she said, "Well, yes, you have to be kind. Of course,
Mm.
karma's going to come and bite you there." And yes, and so I said, "Yeah, but you get pissed off sometimes. You can't be kind all the time."
Exactly.
Yeah,
How do you be
yeah,
kind all the time? I
right,
don't think
right.
it is possible, but we just need to be mindful of that and say,
Mindful
okay,
of
it's
that.
okay to have a little bit of a you can have a bit of a break and you can be
Yeah.
a bitch or you could be
Well,
whatever you
we
need
are
to be.
humans. Yeah.
We're human.
Mhm.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
humans.
We're
And
human.
here we
Oh my
were
gosh.
supposed to talk about something else, and we've gone on to that's us humans for us.
That's utterly unscripted.
Utterly unscripted, right?
I want you to tell people about yourself. You have a huge, long list
Oh my
of
goodness.
achievements. You've done so much in
Yeah.
your life. And I
Uh-huh.
know that
Yeah.
there was a particular reason that I wanted to have you onto the show.
Mhm.
Your introduction to people. So the stuff that you're doing now is very different to what you've done, say, in the past. So if
Yes.
you can give
Yes.
a
Yes.
little
Um, yeah. Okay,
synopsis, I guess.
I will. All right. So I have to say, I'm going to couch what I'm going to say with something that may be of interest to the listeners. As I grew up, from day one until now, I could really specifically remember that I always looked for a muse or someone or an older person who would take me under their wing to tell me, should I have, should I study this or study that, or am I
Mhm.
doing the right thing in this? And then when I got to be a certain age where I was supposed to be the role for someone else, I figured,
Yeah.
well, there really is no role then, because they
Mm.
inevitably, they let you down because they tell you stupid things. But
Yeah.
anyway, okay, so now we know. I came over the on a boat, and so there was a certain amount of bilingual. No, not really. I can't say that because I had to go learn Italian again in high school. But I
Mm.
grew up with these two cultures, and in college, and I had an interesting professor who got me interested in doing interpreting, conference interpreting, going from one
Mhm.
language to the other. He was in the French department, and I couldn't pass. The grades were terrible, and it was the only lesson that I went to where my grades were C. So I
Oh.
went crying to him one day. My God, I can't. I study so much for this. I don't know what. And he took his tissues. He goes, "No, look, Claudia." He said, "Claudia," to me with his name, Claudia. He said, "Look, you're the perfect candidate for this type of job because you have these two cultures, you have this personality, because it's the personality that will allow you to,
Yeah.
dance on your feet when things become difficult." All right.
Mm.
So he became a model for me, and he worked for the State Department. Then I started, freelancing when I finished university level. I started getting my jobs. I lived in the greater New York area and in New York City for quite a bit. And then the day came, I decided to apply for the State Department, take their test for to become an interpreter, a freelance interpreter, and I did
Mhm.
that. And so that started a career for me. Whether I liked it or not, I have to say, because your body goes where you seem that everything's pushing you, and I
Yeah.
had no idea how difficult it was going to be, because I would take my luggage. I would get a call from Washington. Go to get a call. Look, we're going to send you a bio. They sent me a bio. You look at the bio, and you have 2 days to decide if you're going to work with that invite. The person who was
Okay.
invited by the State Department. And so I usually said yes, because I was at the beginning of my career, and then that meant that I would have to get my luggage, go to Washington, sit down with these people, and decide where they would go. So I had no idea what the topic was. I had
Mm.
no idea how cold it was going to be. And I had no idea, about anything. So you had to pack a little bit of everything. And of course, back then it was the big dictionaries. We didn't have all of these devices that you could just pick up the
I
words, right?
remember the days.
And so inevitably, every time I went to San Francisco, it was so cold. And I ended up
Ah.
buying, for some reason, San Francisco has that in the summertime, it's not cold, it's not warm. So that was, let's say, my baptism of fire in terms of a profession. And then I
Mm.
freelanced out of New York City, English, Italian, English. I worked with French as a passive language, French and into English, then and now. Mostly, I have more passive languages. And then, of course, you cross the pond from Europe to the States, so many times. And
Yeah.
then I got bit. I got fall in love. And I thought, oh God, and now I have to move again. So and sorry, so there's a lot of movement in my life, and a lot of change. And one of the changes, even though conference interpreting stayed with me up until now, I
Mm.
started teaching conference interpreting. In Italy, I won a national competition for a position of associate professor in social linguistics, which allowed me
Mhm.
to teach conference interpreting. And uh, that's how I started my academic career. So it's writing, writing,
Mm.
writing, academic things all the time, and filling in the gaps for people who got sick in Rome. They'd call me up in a pinch. I'd go in. And so my
Uh-huh.
strong point was working for the Ministry of the Interior. I love that secret stuff, the
Mm.
DEA, the anti-drug, and this and that,
Yes, yeah.
and all of that hush hush stuff. A fly going away somewhere hidden in the hills of somewhere, and then all of
Oh.
a sudden after 2 days it was gone. Okay, so that was that. at one point I saw that everyone was being promoted, especially one year. It was, I think it was around the year 2012. Males were being
Mhm.
promoted to full professor. And I'm thinking, what's the problem here? So
Yeah.
you know, I really started yelling and screaming, really. I'm going, what is this? Because most of them didn't have a PhD. I had a
Uh-huh.
PhD.
You
Most
have a
of them have,
PhD. Yeah.
yeah, and most of them had fewer publications than I had. They were less
Mm.
qualified. I was in this ministry and that ministry, and I was on this commission and that commission, and doing all these high level stuff, not as an
Yeah.
interpreter, but as an educator, as a researcher, and as a
Mhm.
consultant, the constitutional court and all that.
Mm.
So I thought, I couldn't stay mad for so long. So what I did was created an online persona called Christelle Martinet. I left those two letters, CM, and
Uh-huh.
I started reading cards in YouTube. And I, well, this brief parenthesis here saying that I'm in third generation of the occult, member of the occult. I
Mhm. Mhm.
found out after many years that my dad was a medium, my mom was a reader. And
Oh, how interesting.
so I started with showing only we briefly spoke about YouTube and what a strange animal YouTube is, right? Well,
Yeah.
I only showed my hands because God forbid, I thought my students would find me at the university. I
Oh, yeah.
couldn't. So I did that a couple of years like that, and my channel grew. And then a consultant came to me. He wanted to partner, and he said, "Well, why aren't you showing your face?" And I said, "Are you joking? I would never show my face." And he said, "No, you have to go live. Do you have problems with that?" Well, I said, I'm a little picture shy. I hate my
Yeah.
people to take my pictures. So I said, okay, I'll do it. As soon as I pushed that live button, I I, I had so much fun. I had so
Mm.
much fun, and the numbers soared and soared and soared and soared. And so I branched out into that business. I created a business that in the United States to consult with women. Basically, it's 90% women
Mhm.
of all kinds and with all tools. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and I work with past life regression. That's one big thing that I do. And soul therapist. There are so many little hats that I have after that.
Mm.
And then, of course, when you have all these little hats, you start thinking, well, maybe I can throw one away and pull another one, or maybe in this time of day I'll do this time of day. And I've never stopped writing because I basically published all my life practically. And I started writing, and I'm now about to publish in the United States, but a different, non narrative nonfiction.
Mm.
And so this is the kind of development that it has. I have taken in my life, but then there's another little thing that's so important. I can say a movement coach. It's not a movement coach, a Feldenkrais practitioner. I teach lessons in movement, how
Okay.
to move, and I coach. I'm a voice coach using the Feldenkrais method, and of course breath work, and those are done online. This is very recent. This is as of February this year, and so that
Okay.
is very, very important in my life. So you could say there are three things: there's movement, there's writing, and what was the third one? I can't remember. Writing, research, movement, and that third one is the psychic mediumship
Uh-huh.
of my background. And so they almost are at odds with each other. You don't think a university where professor is a psychic. You don't think
Of
that that's
course.
possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my life in a nutshell. Yeah.
It's such
I
an
mean, I could.
exciting story.
It's an exciting story, but I mean, to tell you the truth, I can remember my children talking to each other, and I had a client in the kitchen. I was in the kitchen reading for them, and I could hear them whispering, "She's at it again." She's at it again.
Oh, no.
Why do these people come to you? Do they know you? Are they crazy?
I like that you've had so many hats. Like you said, I said it's a very interesting story because I mean it. It's
Yeah.
it's something it makes me feel like what I'm doing has some purpose because I
Of
was told
course.
something not long ago. It wasn't long ago, maybe just
Tell me,
before the
by a
pandemic.
psychic? Tell me, tell me.
No, not at all, actually. It was just a
Mhm.
friend who said to me, who, because I was struggling.
Yep,
I was working for a family business,
yep.
and it wasn't great. I
Mhm.
wasn't enjoying it. I had lost my travel agency. Things had started to turn
Oh.
down, and
Oh.
already pre-pandemic, things
Ah.
were not going well
Oh,
economy
dear.
wise.
Uh-huh.
So I decided to close down the business, and so I was at a loss as to
Of
what I was
course.
going to do.
Mhm.
And I kept thinking maybe what I needed to do was go back to travel, go back to
Ah.
working as a travel agent. Oh God, I
Uh-huh.
could think of nothing worse.
Ah, it is.
Going
It's
back
I was
after
once
running my
a
own
travel
business,
agent. Of course. Oh, that's even
Oh,
worse. That
I'd been running
yeah.
my own business for 6 years, and I
No,
traveled all
you
over the
can't.
world, and
You
I'd done my
can't.
own thing, and I
Mm-mm.
just thought,
Yeah.
I can't think of anything worse. I was already working at the post office. That was
Mhm.
already pissing me off because I was working for people
The
who
institutions.
it was, yeah, yeah, it
You know,
was.
you
You
don't
know,
know if they think. Do these people think? You know?
no, they don't think. I can tell you that actually, almost certainly they don't. They had no idea. The people I had been working with, a friend of mine, I was just helping out, and then these other people bought the post office, and they decided to keep me on, which I was kind
Wor
of
lucky
appreciative.
you.
I was, yeah, I felt really lucky because the
Yeah,
other woman who had been working for 7 or 8 years at the post office, they didn't like her and they just
yeah.
decided to let her go. So I felt really
Ah,
lucky.
okay.
But the more I got to know them, the more
Yeah.
I thought these people are idiots. They
Oh, I
have
know.
got
I hate to
no
say that.
idea.
I hate to say that, but sometimes that's
They're just
the
idiots.
truth. I hate to use the word idiots, but they're clueless.
They
They're
were
clueless.
clueless.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
little
They
better.
were absolutely clueless to everything. They didn't know how to manage anything. They were relying on me. They were relying on my partner who would come in and work for free for 8
Yeah.
hours of the day. They would
Oh
never
God.
pay. They would pay me, but my partner wasn't being paid. And I just
Look,
thought that was
as you're
really bad.
talking, I'm thinking the word that an Italian would say for a person like that, they don't even know where they are.
Yeah. No, they don't. They
Yeah,
don't.
yeah,
That was I was struggling with that. So I was
yeah.
struggling with a lot of things, and I had been talking to my friend, and she said, "Well, who said you have to go back and be a travel agent?
Mhm.
Who said that that's what you have to be doing?" And I said, "Because that's what
Exactly.
I know. I've
Mm.
worked in call centers, but I've worked in call centers as a travel agent.
Yeah,
One of
yeah,
my
yeah,
first jobs was not as a travel agent, but I very quickly went from working in telecommunications to working in travel, and I
yeah.
traveled all around the world. I lived in Amsterdam for 7
Oh, how
years
nice, how nice.
working for KLM. And
Oh,
actually,
now that's nice,
Alitalia, the
actually.
Italian airline, I was doing
Mhm.
their bookings because they were a partner of KLM.
Right,
So,
exactly, yeah.
yeah, I spent a lot of time doing that travel based, everything travel based, travel based. So
Yeah,
I felt like that's what I needed to do.
right.
I needed to go back into travel. And she said, "Why? Why do you have to do that? Who said that just because you've done that for a huge portion of your life, that has to be the only thing that you do? Why
Yeah,
do you always have to do the same thing for the rest of your life?
yeah,
Find something that you're passionate about, find something
yeah.
that you're interested in, and go after that." And she's a very wise woman. She's
Yeah,
she's a
yeah,
wise woman, a really close friend, someone I
yeah.
admire, and she has lived that her whole
Ah,
life, where
oh,
she said,
nice.
"I'm just not into this anymore. I'm going to go do something
That's
else."
good, that's good, that's
So
good.
I decided to apply to law school.
Wow, when was this? How long ago?
Last year. I turned
Now.
40 and I said,
Wow.
okay, I wanted to do it when I left school. Everybody who's listened to the podcast has probably heard me talk about it. They're probably rolling their eyes, Claudia.
You look
Oh, he's talking
this is
about it
I
again.
always at least once a week, I say, if I come back next lifetime, I want to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
I want to, case law. That's my
Yes.
jurisprudence. That's
Jurisprudence. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd wanted to do it since I left school. And I thought, let's give it a go. I'll try it
Like
out,
it.
see if I
Do you like
can.
it?
Love it.
Ah, see,
The
now this is
best
nice.
thing I
This
ever
is nice.
did. The
It's
best.
nice.
I'm
That's nice.
glad I didn't do it straight out of school when
Yeah.
I was, leaving
Yes.
school 17, 18 years old and then going to university. I'm so glad I
Mhm.
didn't do that. I went and I lived overseas. I traveled for
Mhm,
years and
mhm.
years and years, and I saw the world and experienced everything. I still love traveling and I cannot wait
Yeah.
to get out there again. Right
Yeah.
now I'm a little hesitant, but that's my
Yes,
own
yes.
crap that I'm hanging on
There's,
to. But
there's interesting overlap with us here because I too went to Europe and I had a BA, and
mm,
only at the age of 50 did I get a PhD
okay.
because I was shamed in a graduate defense of a thesis because I made a fool of myself, and so I said, I'm never going to let that happen to me again. Let me go back and study. I'll get the. So, but it
But
is.
can
I
I
have to
ask
say,
you,
the
whose
best.
shame was it, yours or was it the other person's?
Well, it may have been theirs because I was a colleague, a bona fide
Yeah.
colleague, but I was acting like an ass, really.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the thing is that I have to say, if there's one thing that I did, um, it is the best that I've ever done in my entire life is go out and get that PhD, because
Mm,
it's
mm.
not that I'm going to use it for something. Well, then I did, because then I had my degree, my position in the university. But it is something that you could use in everything you do. The way
Mhm.
you reason, you speak to people, and you know what they're going to say already. You know how to counter or guide or whatever, because
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
an abstract, it's the way to use abstract thinking and your
yeah.
logical skills. It's amazing, it's wonderful, and learning how to do research. Everything after that, after my PhD, the way I approached it, even the clinical hypnotherapy hypnotherapist degree that I have,
Mm.
is as an offshoot of that, because I used the skills that I learned while I was studying, and I could just pick up so many things effortlessly, really
Yeah,
effortlessly, because
yeah,
all you have to do is look at the page, and you know how to scan, you know how to study. Your skills are so, your mind is not on fire, but it's very cool, actually.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and the thing is that now, of course, the money goes out when you have to pay, if you don't have a some form of help or assistance,
Yeah.
but it pays for itself, a thousandfold.
Mm.
Almost immediately too. Almost
Yeah.
immediately. Interesting. It is
It is,
interesting.
isn't it? And it's a
Yeah,
different
sure is.
time now. People are pursuing a PhD for different reasons than maybe
Sure.
they would have back in the
Right, right,
90s
right.
and early
Yeah,
thousands.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah, because there's a lot more that we are aware of, I guess.
Sure.
And I mean, it's pretty cool to call yourself doctor, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, no, it's better when other people call you doctor.
Yeah, well, that's true, yeah. Yes, having other people
Yeah.
call you
Call
doctor.
you
Yeah, for
doctor,
sure.
yeah, and
Yeah,
writing that after your name, da, 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 you know?
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I do think that there are different reasons. Let me talk with you about, because you've talked now about the hypnotherapy
Right.
and the past life
Sure.
regression,
Right.
etc.
Mhm.
I I was thinking to myself, I wanted to quickly go back because you were talking about how all these men were being promoted
Promoted.
over
Yes.
you. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
but why? Why were they? It was just
Well, it's a
because you're a woman?
patriarchal. No, well, this
Yeah.
is, yeah, well, it's an institution, a university institution.
Yeah.
It's a private university, and it's a small
Okay.
university, and then it's very patriarchal no matter how you cut it. And actually, a friend that I thought was my friend, we had worked in other universities of Bologna and together, we drinking all
Mm.
nights and, every night. He ended up being my boss, and I
Oh, really?
and but he has no PhD. He has one book. One
Uh-huh.
book published,
Is it the one that you wrote with him?
No,
Oh.
that's funny. No, 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 no. But still, it's, but that's not the thing. He became a dean of the faculty. Then he became the rector of the university, and all
Mm.
through that time, what we there are two things. There's in Italian we say there are two weights and two measures that people evaluate you with all the time. And during that time, my subject, my material of study, conference interpreting, was the it was the study program that brought in 80% of the students of all the
Wow.
faculty of all the departments. And so that's a lot of power that you have,
Yeah. Mm.
and that was not seen upon kindly. They just
Right.
didn't like that. And
Yeah.
so, I was fine with that. Just put me at the head of an international department. So I traveled all around and made bilateral agreements. Okay. All right. But still, why not get paid the same amount? You know,
Mm.
and so that's how it usually, but it did help me in another way, Jesse, because that brought me on to a start research program of why women of power, not who have power, but women of power, how does the media represent them? Because at the time I was
Mhm.
watching all different kinds of things, movies, TV series in the United States, and they were very interesting, very entertaining, but very
Yeah.
clear. So I used social linguistic tools and analytical tools, a very delicate level of analysis. And so I started writing papers of my research projects, different papers for different, journals, international journals. And um, I started seeing a pattern, and I decided to put them together in a book. And that's when, well, just to say that book morphed, the title was Women of Power, something like that. It morphed into the work that I'm doing now, this book that I'm, geared to the United States, that
Mhm.
changed into the magic of pleasure seeking. So,
Yes.
but it is still based on the research that I have done, except that
Yeah.
they come in as examples. It's a different way to present your findings.
Mhm.
But it's interesting. It's very interesting, and I'm wondering, Jesse, what direction you will be going in with that study that you're doing, because you will be so surprised at what piques your interest and what
Yeah.
gives you more passion to hone in on. Is
Yeah.
it a discipline, is it a topic, or is it really piecing, doing comparative work and seeing the different differences and distinction between different systems? It's interesting. It's
It
interesting.
is. And
It's
funny, I'm in my 2nd year now,
uh-huh,
and I've just switched to a different university. It's actually a more prestigious
uh-huh,
university in
hmm,
Australia. They
nice.
thankfully accepted me.
Oh,
I
good.
was set back a little bit. I have to redo another unit because it didn't quite line
Yeah,
up
yeah,
with,
of course.
how it goes.
Yeah, of
You
course,
switch to another university, and
of
the
course.
consequence is you
You
have to
have to
just you have to
adapt.
do
Yeah.
what they say. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
right.
so there's one
Yeah.
course I have to redo, even though they gave me credit for the other part of it. And
Yeah, yeah.
I've been struggling with that actually over the last few weeks because I just thought, oh, why do I have to do this again?
Mhm.
I've done it already, and I've been looking at the course materials and thinking, I've done all this, and I don't want to do it again. I want to keep moving. I feel like I don't want to stop my evolution. Is I'm
Right,
calling it an evolution. I can't
right.
explain it in any other way
Development, growth.
because
Mhm,
my brain is growing, my brain is
mhm.
developing, and it
Yeah,
is changing. Everything about the way that I see things is changing. When
right.
I first started out, so my goal when I first started out
Yeah.
was I wanted to go and work for the either Brooklyn or Queens District Attorney's Office
Ah,
in New York.
I did at one time myself, yeah, as an interpreter. They paid me peanuts.
Yeah.
Peanuts.
Well,
Peanuts, so my mother
they
used
pay
to
their
say.
attorneys peanuts as
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
which wasn't
yeah.
that wasn't what attracted me.
Yeah, I know, no, of course not,
I
of
followed the
course not.
Brooklyn district attorney on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and I'm really
Uh-huh.
interested in the work that they do. And the United States has always had a very specific pull for me.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Um, I lived in Louisiana for a very long time, and
Oh, yeah.
so I've had this. I think it's a past life thing. We can talk
Yeah,
about
could
that.
be, could be.
Because when I'm not there, I feel I'm trying to say it in a way that doesn't sound too mumbo jumbo for some of the people that are
Uh-huh.
listening, but I guess there's no other way that I can say it. It's like a voice inside me
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah, that's
says,
how it is.
"Jesse, come home."
Yeah, that's the way it is. That's the way things
And I
communicate
get
to
off
you.
the
Yeah,
plane the last time. Now, I haven't been back to the United States since 2011. So
yeah.
2011 was the last time I was there. And I flew from Adelaide to Honolulu,
Mhm.
Honolulu to Phoenix,
Yeah.
Phoenix to Houston, and then I
Yeah.
drove 2.5 hours from Houston to
Ah,
where I was living in Lake
wow.
Charles, Louisiana.
Mhm.
And but the second I'd never been to Hawaii before, it was my first time going,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the second I got off the plane, I felt all this voice and warmth and
Yeah.
welcome home.
Nice.
Welcome
Nice.
home. We're so glad to
Nice.
have you
That's
back
nice.
here.
That's nice.
It was
Yeah.
so nice. And when I had to leave, I had been robbed at gunpoint.
Oh my
Um,
god.
I yeah, another story. There's another episode where I talked about that. I won't bore you all with it again, but I was robbed at gunpoint and I really struggled. I suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder and I had
Uh-huh.
mad anxiety and
Mm.
I was really struggling. I couldn't walk out of the door of my house
I
or
know
out
what
of
that
the
is like.
apartment
Mhm.
without feeling like, well, anxiety, like
Of
something was
course.
going to happen to me, and I struggled a lot. I struggled for a few months before I just decided I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and as much as I didn't want to, I had to book a ticket home to Australia
Yeah, that's
and
too
just
bad.
get out of there for a little while.
Mhm.
But oh, it was so hard.
Yeah, I bet.
Leading up to it, but the drive to the airport, it was it's hard to explain. It was like a death.
Yeah, I know, I know, I know.
I
This is
was
closing,
grieving.
the door's closing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was.
Uh,
I felt as though everything was ending in
mhm.
Louisiana, and I haven't been
Yeah.
back since. And funny enough, nearly everyone that I knew in Louisiana, with the exception of a few people who will probably
Mhm.
never leave, they've probably never set foot out of Louisiana.
Mhm.
So apart from those couple of people that I still know there, no one
Yeah.
else lives there anymore. They've all moved. They've
How
all disappeared to
interesting.
other places, and
Hmm.
Louisiana doesn't call me back anymore, but I still felt the pull to come.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
wanna
yeah.
graduate. I still wanna do the New York, bar exam,
Well,
but I'm
this
not a
is
US
an interest
citizen, so
I know, but you're not a US citizen. That is a problem. That will be a
yeah, they
problem
won't let
for
me
work.
work for
Yeah. Right.
the
Yeah,
district
yeah.
attorney's office until you've been. I think I was reading and it said I had to be a permanent resident first for so long, then I had to be a citizen for so many
Well, you
years before they would
can
allow me to
pray
do
to
that.
get a green card.
Yeah.
They have these lotteries
Yeah.
every year. Yeah.
I enter the lottery every year. I have
Oh,
done
good
for
for
the
you.
last
Good for you.
I've been entering since I was 18.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I've never been to Louisiana. It's one place I'd really like to go.
Go to New
Um,
Orleans.
yeah, New Orleans is the
Yeah.
pull for me. Yeah.
That's the
Mm.
pla and when I went there for the first time, holy shit, it was amazing. There were
Yeah.
bright lights. It was like it
Yeah,
has an
yeah.
aura about it. I
Yeah,
fell in
it's
love with
music.
that city.
Mhm.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was so beautiful.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed it. I went and actually I had a weird introduction to New Orleans because it was a friend of mine who had grown up there in the
Ah,
Ninth Ward. So she
uh-huh.
had grown up, in the
When
French
you
Quarter.
say the Ninth Ward, is that a section of Louisiana?
Yes, it is. So,
Ah, okay.
when
I
Hurricane
thought it was
Katrina
Oslo.
came, it wiped out the
Mhm.
lower Ninth Ward,
Oh. Oh,
and
dear.
she was just on the opposite side in the French Quarter, closer to the city. So the house that
Ah,
she grew up in actually withstood the floods,
uh-huh.
and it was relatively untouched. So
Mhm.
it's within the city of New
Mm.
Orleans,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so my introduction was her stomping ground while she was
I
younger, back
see.
in the
I
40s and
see.
50s.
Uh-huh-huh.
So I went
Interesting,
to
though.
I went to see all the graveyards.
Oh god. Yeah, yeah, of course. The best place to go, you know?
Exactly. I'm a graveyard tourist. The first place I wanna
Yeah,
go and see when I go to a new city is
yeah,
the cemeteries.
yeah, yeah,
It's just a pull for me.
yeah,
It's really interesting to me. I don't know why. I'm just
yeah.
interested. I feel like I need to. But New Orleans was a
The
great city.
when,
Anywhere out of New Orleans, it's a completely different world.
when I was growing up, in a suburb of Paterson, New Jersey, which is the silk capital of the world once. They have a huge falls that generated electricity.
Wow.
Um, Across the street from where I lived, about, let's say, 100 meters, there's this huge cemetery, all green, beautiful. And
Oh.
I could remember when I was 12, 11, 10, 13, the boys had built a fort in the
Oh,
cemetery. And so that's where we all went.
yeah.
I know a lot about cemeteries.
It's peaceful, and,
Yeah, it's
I wanna
peaceful,
talk
right?
about that actually because there's people who might be listening who are thinking, "You people are nuts. Why would you wanna go to a cemetery?"
Okay,
But it
wait.
is peaceful.
Disclaimer: what there is to be said, there's something to be said about, well, people like me who work with souls and work with
Mhm.
that side. You get close to these areas.
Mm.
You have to be careful of your aura. You have to clean yourself. You have to, because
Yeah.
you attract negative energy, and people with light attracts a lot. They
Mhm.
attract a lot. So that's, I mean, we can go there, but there are consequences. It's like eating too much ice cream. It's great, but there are consequences.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, I like the cemeteries as well, and every cemetery has its own flavor and its
Yes.
own allure.
Mm.
Even the older ones are fascinating. Yeah,
And all over the world, they're different,
yeah, they're all
The
different.
cemeteries in Paris are such a contrast to,
Yeah,
although they're French in origin, in New Orleans, the cemeteries there have, like you said, a different flavor. Then
right.
you come here to Australia, our cemeteries here are relatively new in
You,
comparison. I
mhm,
mean, especially if you go around the Netherlands, Belgium, France,
right, sure.
those cemeteries, some of them have graves that are older than Australia.
Of
You
course,
know?
of course. Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
but the feeling, you can feel it there, and,
right, yeah.
I've tuned myself out to a lot of this stuff. I actually had this conversation with somebody else recently. I used to be a person who worked in the light work field.
Oh,
I was very in tune,
how?
intuitive. I worked
How? Tell
I
me.
worked as a medium.
Uh-huh.
So,
And why is it in the past tense?
because I
Mhm.
because I was robbed at gunpoint and went through
Ah.
the post-traumatic stress, I had a difficult
Ah.
time, and I funny enough, when I was
Ah.
robbed, I had a sign from a family member who had passed away, and
Mhm.
they helped me to survive that because I have such a big mouth, and I'm a little bit mouthy and I like to say things. These guys that robbed us, I was mouthing off to them. And
Oh,
I think
dear.
if I hadn't followed the signs that I was given, I probably would have been shot straight through
Oh my
the left
god.
temple.
Look, I
So,
I know what that's
yeah.
like. I was, a crazy person got a knife to my neck in a
Oh my
subway
lord. Oh
one night,
gosh.
New Year's Eve. I
Uh
went to run with a friend of mine. We went to do the laps of Central Park, and on the way home, we
huh.
took a subway, and then someone, I guess that my boyfriend who was with me, looked around, and I guess he saw it coming. He saw the knife being swung in the
Oh.
air, and I'm here Pollyanna. Everybody left the car, and this guy grabs me and puts
Oh
this
my
knife at
word.
my throat, and so my boyfriend's out there on the platform pulling my arm, pulling. I didn't even know what was going on, and of course
Wow.
he pulled me out, and then we ran after the marathon, and then we ran back to the party. Oh god. But
Amazing.
you live in cities, that's what happens. You have to be
Yes.
prepared for. Even when I was a little girl, I could remember men showing themselves with opening what they usually wear, raincoats, and
The trench
I
coats.
a trench coat, yeah, and I
Yeah.
thought, well, and when that happens when you're so young, you think, well, yeah, I guess maybe that's there to tell me that they don't look like me.
Right, right,
So
right.
and so you grow up with all these things, and all of a sudden you realize you're a sexual person. You
Mm.
you are being targeted for some reason.
Yes,
The
yeah,
way
yeah.
people grow up. I mean, because when you're so young, you we don't have any excuse anymore. We can't blame everything on our parents, right? We
No, that's right.
that ends at a certain age. But
Yeah.
you grow up, and I'm the kind of person who loves adventures. You give me 10 cents when I was a kid, I went to Woolworths and I would get this creamy sundae, always. Or I'd get 5 cent, the smaller one. Then for other 5 cents, I'd go to the candy store and get something else.
Yeah, yeah. I've recalled this with my sister actually when we were younger. We would
Mhm.
get 5, 10, 20 cents, and we would
Right.
go down to um I don't know what you call them, like the bodegas, I guess.
Well, I guess they were
Similar.
bodegas. Yeah. Now I could remember
Yes,
it was a candy store. Maybe it was
a
a
candy
bodega, but for
store.
me, it was a candy store.
Something like that. We would go there. Here we don't call them bodegas, we would call them a deli or the corner
Ah,
store.
deli. Yeah, yeah, corner
Yeah,
stores.
yeah,
Mhm.
and 20 cents worth of,
Oh, that's a lot.
like a
That's a lot.
20-cent bag of candy, and the lady,
Gee,
I remember clear as if it were yesterday, and she said, "Are you sure? Yeah. Are you sure your mother said you could have 20 whole cents worth?"
the little white bags.
Yes, the white bags, and if I give $1 to my niece and nephew, they just look at me like, "What are you giving me
Yeah,
$1 for?" Because it costs $5 just for,
right, right, right,
for
right,
something, a candy
right.
bar or whatever it is you want to. It's just
Listen,
funny, isn't it, that we
yeah, it
have such
is.
a different experience growing up in different time.
When, grew up in Paterson, New Jersey for until I guess I was 10 years old, and my parents brought us to, had us go through a religious school, and
Uh-huh.
I kid you not, we had to go to church every day. There was first, I guess, from 8 to 9, and then we'd go to school. And and I became wise at a certain moment because then I realized, I mean, at one point we had communion. And so if held myself up for communion, no breakfast, we would get some money and we could go to the bakery store near the church and get something to eat afterwards, right? And so that was the 10 cents. And so we'd go, but then we even got wiser because they had the ones from yesterday that cost half price. And so then we'd be able to get so it was go so we were manipulating, we were instrumentalizing religion
Yeah.
to get the sweets.
And how is that going for you now? Like, I mean, I grew up in a Catholic family, Italian Roman Catholic, of course, and
Yeah.
went to the Roman Catholic school and was baptized, confirmed, had
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
reconciliation, all of that stuff. These days, though, and especially since I left school and became so involved with spirit,
Uh-huh.
I changed my ideas a little bit where I became less Catholic and
Yeah.
more agnostic.
Mhm. Well, let's say I think everyone goes through that process, and
Yeah.
but for me, it happened early on because my dad wanted me to go to church on Sunday, and I just wasn't
Uh-huh.
having it. So I could remember a
Yeah.
rip-roaring fight where I said, "But why should I go? I don't want to
Yeah.
go." So then he sort of backed off, and then one day he said, "Okay, Claudia, but you have to have faith. You've got to believe in something." So he
Yeah.
gave me his whole
Yeah.
spiel, an hour long, and I didn't understand what he was saying until much, much later. And then I figured it out. And so, so
Yeah.
that's because I mean, everyone, when you grow up in a multicultural area, I mean, there are Arabs, Muslims, and people who have different things to pray with, and
Yeah.
different places to go. And my best friend was a Jewish kid in grammar
Mm.
school, and
In Jersey?
invited me to
No.
yeah to the bar mitzvah. And I thought, what is the bar mitzvah? I didn't know what it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
And then when we went there, and I saw all the strange food, from in my mind, strange from the tongue. When I found out there was tongue there and they had a sauce to put on the
Oh,
tongue, I that was one place I didn't eat. So I mean, when you grow up in
yeah.
that kind of community, it just is very blatant, the
Mm.
differences and the idea, because unfortunately, maybe it's different today. The Roman Catholic Church advertised with the one God. This is the one God, and you couldn't do that. You just couldn't
Yeah,
do that
yeah.
because it was just against it went against all of the things that were shouting out at you
Mhm.
elsewhere.
Mm.
How's that
Yeah,
working for you? I
I
like
was
that.
reprimanded by a teacher at school because it was a Catholic school, and during those years, I was really, developing my gift, I guess, where I
Yeah,
was hearing the voices, I was hearing the messages, I was speaking to angels.
right. Or
Uh,
whatever
I
they are.
s whatever they were. Um, I was hearing spirit guides, I was hearing people
Right,
who had departed, I was
right,
learning how to read tarot, and,
right.
I was told actually by a teacher that if I ever spoke of it while I was at school, that I would be immediately expelled. It was the devil's work, and
Of course, of course.
you were
Oh,
not
yes.
to talk
Oh,
about that.
yes.
You were not to bring
Yeah.
that into the Catholic school.
Right,
Funny
right.
enough, that hypocrite of a teacher, that hypocrite of a teacher came to me for a job one year to
Oh,
work for
isn't
me
that
as a
funny?
psychic.
I can't
Mm,
believe that. I cannot believe that. Wow.
yeah. Yeah, and I
Wow.
reminded her of the sermon that she gave me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Of course.
Yeah, anyway, let me talk about hypnotherapy because I've only ever spoken to one hypnotherapist
Ah,
before, but
mhm.
I'm really
Okay.
interested in the past life regression. I have had
Yes.
Reiki
I only
before,
I only use it for past life regression. I
just for
don't work
past
with
life.
yeah, I don't work, with people who want to stop smoking, and I don't, because
Uh-huh,
I have
no, no.
so many other things that I prefer. Um,
Mm.
but have you ever undergone hypnosis?
I myself have not,
Well, it's fascinating. It's
at least not
fascinating.
that I was aware.
Well, you are aware. You will always
Yeah,
be aware. It's not
well, I
that
would
you
know
will
then.
be
Mm.
blanking out, you are aware. Um,
Yeah.
well, what do you want to know? What do you want to know as she smokes?
Yeah.
Long cigarettes have to be very long.
Oh, yes, the very long filters. Yes, please. It's very
What
avant-garde, isn't it?
yeah. I don't smoke.
I've had a past life regression before, but
Yes.
it
Oh,
happened during a
so
Reiki session.
but wait a minute now. That means if you were had a past like regression, and it was through Reiki, the person in any case held you in a certain energetic form under a certain. I have to say, it's similar to. It had to be hypnosis. That's the same
Mm.
process.
I don't believe I was hypnotized, but I didn't recall until
But
later
did
when
you
I was
record
listening
it? Was it
back. Yeah, it
recorded?
was
Yeah.
recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and I was listening to the recording, and it was my voice.
Yeah.
Well,
Sure.
it was me
Yeah.
speaking, and
Yeah.
I was speaking about, I had been shot in the back by an
Uh huh.
arrow, and
Uh-huh.
the person who was giving me the Reiki session said that I was one of their leaders in this
Mhm.
community that they lived in on
Right.
the ancient civilization of Mu. I don't know if you're
Okay.
aware of
No.
Mu.
No.
Similar to the Atlantis
Right.
type
Yes, yes,
of
yes, yes.
civilization. So it was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lost civilization.
Right.
The That's the only thing that got to me. I could
Uh-huh.
hear it was my voice. I couldn't remember having the
Uh-huh.
conversation,
Uh-huh.
and I can't verify, of course, because Mu doesn't exist anymore. MU, Mu.
No, the thing is that okay, um, let's say we've been talking a lot about religions, we've been talking about spirituality, we've
Mm,
been talking about and of course, I'll put it in the words of a person that I know who said this. We're speculating, okay?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
we are speculating. Of course, I speculate with things that I hold dear or I know in my heart to be true, and others the same way. So, with a past life regression, the idea is that someone comes to me, right? I'll go through the process knowing full well what past life regression is. And of course, we talk about it, but I have an intake form, and it's very essential that I know why they want to do this. It's not a
Mm,
game,
no, no.
they have to do something. So, on the basis of that, then I proceed with my session based on what they want to do and what
Mm,
they need to know or what they need to learn. And
yeah.
so it's nothing that I do. I don't take them anywhere or but I guide them or I facilitate them in becoming aware of their environment. So we talk about, well, what do you have on your feet? What are your clothes like? What do you see?
Okay.
And
Mhm.
of course the description is made by the person who's under hypnosis, but the idea is after, you know, I've gone through that myself several times. And of course, it's another speculation of, oh, well, it sounds like it was the lost, of it, or it could have been
Yeah.
this, or the Amazon women of, and of course, these are clues that come up, but that's not the
Mm,
most important thing. What is important is that when you were taken to that place at that time, there was a figure there who was a father figure who forbade you to use the sword or the pen as
Mm,
a sword, and you were not ever able to be a writer in your present life because you were
right.
afraid of writing, well, that's, or you don't
Yeah.
swim
Mm,
because you were drowned in that lifetime. And so that is the process. And
okay.
hocus pocus, or is it true? How much of it is true? It doesn't matter if it's true, but it's an aha moment that the person creates themselves, and that's why
Mhm.
it's relevant. And it doesn't
Yeah.
matter if
Yeah.
it's true or not. That's the thing, because our minds conjure up, how can I put it? One other way to make it a little easier to believe is that when you read a book, you're you're suspending your reality for some time,
Yeah,
and
sure.
the best books allow you to enter that book and you feel like one of the characters. And of
Mhm.
course, that is very real for us. And that's what brings, believe me, I've been writing about pleasure for years now. That is what brings people pleasure, when they
Yeah.
can be safe in understanding that what they're doing is not real. Video games, all of that, that brings people
Mm,
pleasure. And
mhm.
this past life regression is seeing a new rebirth, I think, because it
Mhm.
is a way to solve, I don't want to use that word, but to come to have problems emerge, answers
Mhm.
emerge for difficulties that a person has. And it's an excellent way. I mean, you do have to be careful with what you're doing, but because sometimes people go close to death and they freak out, they see themselves dying, that is
Ah,
really,
right.
you have to
Yeah.
be there, or move them along or pull them out, or understand that it's safe for them to do that, and then you can pull them
Mm.
out. But it's a fascinating way to see yourself and your difficulties and who you are today based on what you conjure up as
Mm.
having experienced in the past. Yeah.
So it's like giving your brain a new perspective.
Yeah, new perspective, creating
Mm.
another little world for itself to go traveling. It's a trip. It's a
Yeah.
adventure trip. Yeah, yeah.
And
It's nice.
why would people need to have that new perspective, do you think?
Well, recently a young woman came to me, and she had all these fears. She was afraid. Her relatives were after her to get a driver's license, but she was afraid. She just couldn't. She was 22. And
Mhm.
she just couldn't. She was deathly afraid, and she couldn't understand
Wow.
why. And so one of her relatives suggested it. And she was about to get married, and she didn't want to go into a wedding, into a marriage where she didn't have this one very big fear dealt with. And so that's how it happened. And other
Mm.
people, another woman was passionate about writing, but she didn't have her in her to take up her computer and start writing again. She just couldn't. She would be blocked.
Mm.
Another woman came to me because she just couldn't swim. So she was afraid of water. So many different types.
Mm.
It's usually fears
Okay.
or unknowns. For example, in one case, it was a person who had not come to terms with being a a male figure, a male rose. It was a person that I knew, I had met on I'm a tango dancer on the dance floor, and he was the male. Of course, in Italian, we'd say the male role or the women's role, but internationally in English, they say the leader and the follower.
Oh, yeah, the leader.
So
Mhm.
it's very ingrained male female here, like that. And
Mm.
he was the leader. He was the male pusher, he had to push the woman. And so he just couldn't, he had trouble. He had been learning tango for years and years and years and years, and he wanted to get it out of his system because he too was going to get married. He too fell in love with this woman, and he too wanted her to dance. So there's very personal. Sometimes it might seem frivolous, but they're very, very ingrained
Mm.
fears that people like to deal with. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess it could also help people who maybe are finding themselves in endless cycles of
Yes,
bad
stuck.
relationships
Yes,
or
exactly,
things like that. Like,
exactly.
why am I going
To
through?
married
these
men. Why do I
things.
date married men
Yeah.
all the time? Why do I,
Yeah. Why am I in
3
an abusive
dates?
relationship and
Right,
then I leave that
exactly.
abusive relationship and I
Right,
end
and
up
get
in
into
another
another. Right,
abusive
exactly.
relationship? Because that is a cycle people go through quite a lot.
Yes, this is very, very common. This is very common
Yeah.
when you get stuck in a repetitive pattern. That's
Mm.
you just can't get out
Ha
of it.
and is everybody different then when you're exploring
Oh,
those
very
patterns that people
oh
are in,
god,
like the
yeah.
reasons that they're in that pattern?
Well, yes, it's very different, and again, it doesn't emerge from me, it emerges from that
From
person.
them, yeah.
They themselves bring it up, you know? It's
Yeah, yeah.
fascinating. It's quite fascinating, and if you think about it, hypnosis is also used for curing, dealing with obsessions or addictions,
Mm.
overeating, smoking, things like that. And those are repetitive patterns. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Which I think I've heard that there are psychological oh, I'm sorry, I just banged the microphone. I talk a lot with my hands, I'm very
Yeah,
Italian.
me too.
Uh, there are psychological reasons behind those types of things. I don't know so much about smoking, but overeating or the
Of
way
course,
that
yeah.
you have a relationship with food, there
Yeah,
is a psychological thing that
of
puts
course.
you in a mindset and you carry that all throughout your
Well, Jesse, name me one thing that's not psychological. One,
yes,
just
I guess
one.
so. But we don't
Yeah, of
think
course,
about it like that.
of course,
We don't
of
put
course.
that perspective
Right,
onto the
right,
things that we're doing.
right.
Tell me about because you said also that you started out doing the tarot,
Yeah.
and you also work as a you you have all of the it's clairvoyance,
Right, right.
claircognizant.
Yes, yes.
So
But it's more clairvoyance, clairaudience. As
uh-huh.
I was a young girl, I had to wear glasses so I can't see, but I can
Uh-huh.
hear.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, clairaudience, and that's I. It's very strong. It's very strong at
Mhm.
times, and when it comes, you have to get it out. You just have to get it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
That too happens in mediumship when I work with people, who want to talk to their loved ones who have passed,
Mm,
Yeah.
mhm. But what are you using those gifts for? You because you said that your hypnosis stuff is just for the
Yes.
past life
Well,
regression.
I have a business as a psychic and
Okay.
I counsel, a therapist. I work with therapeutically helping people,
Mm,
um, and mediumship. I work with mediumship precisely for people who come to me who want to communicate with their loved ones,
mm,
and that's what that's a good part of the work I do, actually. It's a
mhm.
large part of the work I do, and every now and then I do
Yeah.
it publicly on YouTube Live. Yeah,
Oh, do you? Okay.
yeah.
What is that for people who are listening who maybe don't know? I, of
Hmm.
course, know what it is to work
Hmm.
with a medium, but what is that? What could someone get out of and when should someone be looking for a medium? Because you shouldn't always
Well,
there's not
um,
always appropriate times to be talking to a
well,
medium,
you
right?
see, it depends on what a person wants. All right.
Mm,
Let's say that in the last 2 years, COVID, having emerged, just changed the order of things, the way
yeah.
people like me, do their work, because people were dying everywhere, everywhere,
Oh,
everywhere.
yeah.
And the problem with that was that they couldn't be with their loved ones when they were dying, and
When they
that
were
brought an
dying. Mm,
onslaught of people who needed to have closure. They just needed to
mm,
have closure, to know that they were in the light, that they are not earthbound, that they have been, and that they're resting in peace. That's
yeah.
basically. But of course, a lot of people want to know, where did you put your will? Where's the money hidden? And
Yeah.
and that drives me crazy. And it's funny because the responses there are not always forthcoming, but they come forth with some clues at times in the language, the way because they don't care whether you find the money or not.
No.
So there's a very odd way that people think of what spirits do when they are
Mhm.
gone. You know
Yeah, yeah.
that you miss me. I mean, you're not gonna.
It's
They're not
hard
going
for
to miss you.
people.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
hard.
get
It
that.
is
It's
hard.
hard
Yeah.
for people because that evolution that we
Yeah.
go through.
Yeah.
So when we shed the earthly vessel that
Right.
we're using while we're
Yeah.
here and we go across, so we cross that veil,
Right.
it is a completely different
Ball game. It's a
way
different
of,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, you all the shit that you held on while you
Yeah.
were on earth
Third
means
yeah, third
nothing
dimensional
anymore. You
heaviness. Yeah, it
completely
doesn't.
unburden yourself when you
Yeah.
make that transition. And I think because we're left here, we're left with this meaty gooey thing in our heads that
Yeah.
plays tricks on us and makes us think certain ways. We have
Yeah.
trouble understanding that, and we
Of
believe
course.
that they should
Of
be
course.
thinking
Yeah, the
the
way we
same way
think,
that
and do you
we're
miss us?
thinking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Have
Yeah, "Do
what
you miss
can
me?"
you
Well,
have
of course.
messages for your
Yeah.
family? Of course there's messages, of course. And
Yeah.
there is, because love is such a powerful thing, and spirits, even when they do pass, there is this unconditional love that exists, and
Mm.
energy that surrounds everyone. But they may have, of course, reincarnated. And that
Yes.
too, even if they have reincarnated, they can come to you and talk. I mean, if I wanted it, and if you wanted, you can talk to your boyfriend's spirit, even if he was alive, even if he were alive. And
Yeah.
so it's difficult. And much of it, of what I'm saying, is not just speculation. It is logical. It's just
Mm.
logical.
Yeah.
And if you think, and it doesn't, of course, every religion has their vision of heaven. Is there a heaven? I get that question.
Yeah,
So,
right.
is there a heaven? Is it heaven and hell, just like we are taught, and all of that? And you
Yeah.
feel like saying, "Listen, this is hell right here." you
Where
know,
we are is hell. I think we're only a couple of steps above
yeah,
what we all see,
yeah,
that idea of purgatory that we're taught in the Catholic school
yeah.
in
Right,
particular,
right,
where
right.
you're going to hell. That where we are there, I read a book and I wish I could remember now. It's a very long time ago, like I'm talking 30 years.
Mhm.
I was about 15 or 16 when I read this book, and it talked about the 7 levels
Right,
of
right.
of our spiritual
Yes, yeah,
being,
yes,
and where we are here when we are alive here is only 1 or 2 steps above
right. Yeah.
where yuckiness is,
Yes,
and
someone was
I
telling me
think
the
we can
exact same
go.
thing that you're saying to me
Yeah,
2
there
days ago. Mhm.
it's like we can go to the different levels, I
Mhm.
believe. So we can have that spiritual experience where we go to the different levels, but we can't go to certain points. I'm sorry, I'll have to read the book again and we'll talk about it another time, but
But it's, a lot of that is also speculation, and we have Dante's Inferno with all of the
yes, yeah.
rings and
I think
all of
that's
that.
based on that,
Probably, yeah, it
yeah, I
sounds
think
like
it's
it. Yeah, and
yeah,
this,
yeah.
the place that you said when we go to purgatory, I call that now a peri-spiritual place, where,
Mhm.
it is in part, the spirits are bound, they're earthbound
Mm.
still, and it's not a good place to be. And,
No.
um, but, who knows what's gonna happen to me when I pass. And, I always say to everyone, "Oh, God, give me a pen. I just like to sign. I'm so great. I'm ready to go." I've
Yeah.
done so
Yeah,
many
yeah.
things. I don't know how much more I can do. And so I guess the attitude that you have, or the way you deal with difficulties, like people passing. I lost my sister. It
Mm.
was just devastating. And it's just unbelievable. There are things we're not meant to know,
Yeah, yeah, I agree
exactly
with
how
that.
things, and why did she die and I didn't die, and why did they die? I mean, she wasn't that bad. And so we still reason with bad and good, and
Mm.
so we don't wrap our head around, we're not able to wrap our head around around the idea of it's done, it's finished, it's
Yeah,
over.
yeah.
you know
We're
yeah,
restricted a little bit too.
yeah,
We are restricted in our earthly vessel, and
yes,
because we don't utilize all of our brain and we're
yeah,
not completely 100% connected to the universe in a way
yeah,
that,
sure, sure,
and there's a reason for that. There's a reason that we're not
yeah, of course.
connected, the Wi-Fi that we get here is a little bit off.
Yeah, right,
It's not
right.
it's not
It's slow.
100%. The signal is not 100%. Yeah, our signal is low, so we're not, like you said, we're not meant to understand
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
everything, and
Or
so
else
we
we'd
are
be flying
also
around up
restricted.
there. We are humans,
Exactly.
so that's
Yeah,
as far as
yeah.
we can go. with our brain.
exactly. Very quickly, tell me about your podcast. We've been talking
Ah,
for
yes.
ages, so but
Okay.
I want to talk about your podcast because
Okay.
I want people to go and have a listen. You've got more than 100
Okay.
episodes, so
Right, it's
you're
112, 16, something like that, and
yeah.
it's called Multiple Voices, and,
Yes.
Multiple Voices is the name of a company that I have, is my company, it's in the
Mhm.
United States, and the funny thing is that when I started the story that I had about reading cards, I thought, let me do this seriously," so I wanted to register a company, an LLC, and I had the word, I wanted to call it Voices, and in New Jersey, in the United States, you can't have the same name as another company, so they give you
Right.
options. And so I had to call it, I ended up calling it Multiple Voices, and I thought people are going to think I'm crazy, so then it was very neat. Well, anyway, to make a long story short, the podcast started as a way for me to oralize my chapters of the book that I'm working on now. And so
Mm.
I thought if I read it or if I said it or I threw around ideas, that would be an episode, and I'll see how it sounds, right? So
Yeah.
after three, four, five, six, seven of them, I I didn't like the book that way anymore. So I thought, no, 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 I've got to stop here. And so I started in introducing guests and interviewing guests, and that's where the fun came. It's called
Uh-huh.
Multiple Voices, and so I have a different range of guests that come. I sort of cater towards the spirituality and afterlife, things like that. But there is the voice of history, the voice of comedy and laughter, the voice of
Mhm.
there's series and so I categorize them, the voice of science. But some of the, like you said, some of the episodes are so wonderful, but you never know on the receiving end who's listening. They might find some things that are interesting that I don't.
Yeah,
So
sure. Yeah.
I try to vary it as much as I can.
It's a hard
But it's
lesson, isn't it, as a
it's a
podcaster?
it's a hard lesson, and plus, but it's an eye opener because you get to meet so many people, and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
learn so many things, and you learn good and bad. I mean, you learn what not to repeat, and you learn what to repeat even more. And
Yeah, for sure.
it's interesting. What I'm a stickler about language, and so when people come on and speak in a certain way, now I'm not saying different accents that they have, but they don't want to be understood. I'll give you an
Mhm.
example. There was a podcast guest who had tremendous media. I was this, I mean that, I had this 150, all of this hype around this person. So I
Uh-huh.
contacted him and invited him, and the day of the podcast, he locked on and I said, look, there's so much noise. He says, well, I'm traveling from Las Vegas to who knows where. And I said, I can't record like this. Okay. So we had to reschedule. All right. We rescheduled. He sat down, and the way that he spoke was so, biting all of the vowel sounds and using expressions that were so local that you're not making yourself understood. No matter what I could do,
No.
I play the devil's advocate a lot, and I said, can you explain that a little bit? I had trouble sometimes in understanding what the person was trying to say, or
Wow.
he used formula and just shoofed it out of his mouth, and
Uh-huh.
took it for granted. He was on either drugs. Sorry about that. He was either on drugs or on automatic, had pushed the
Right.
automatic button. Oh, this is another episode,
Everyone should
blah,
just
blah, blah.
understand what I'm
Right,
saying.
of
Yeah, I
course.
get it.
Yeah.
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 Mm.
Well, that's
That's
again,
yeah.
it's
I've learned that
tacky.
lesson myself. I've talked to a
Yeah.
few people. They haven't all made it on, and I feel bad not sharing all of the episodes, but
I
I think we
know.
talked about this right before I started
Right.
recording. Sometimes you just have to curate it a little bit, but
Yes.
I have enjoyed being able
Yeah.
to speak to the different people, and I don't
Yeah.
have to agree with everybody.
Of
That's the
course. Of
that's one of the
course.
huge key
Well,
things.
thank
You
God.
don't have
Yeah.
to agree, but we
Variety
just
is the
have to
spice of life.
respectfully
Yes.
listen. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I love that. So
Yeah.
Multiple Voices is the podcast, and it is
Right.
available everywhere. Uh,
Everywhere.
I
Hmm.
found it on about 4 different
Right.
places that I looked,
Right. You'll
so
find it on
it's available definitely at all
everywhere. Yeah.
the major
Sure.
ones. Your
Hmm.
website, is a little
My name.
introduction to yourself. which is
Oh, there are 2. Right.
claudiamonacelli.com and
ClaudiaMonacelli.com and ChristelleMartinet.com, those 2 websites.
Christelle
Yeah,
Martinet.
and
And
they're
there's
linked.
actually a
They're
little
linked.
link. Yes, there
Right?
is. When you
Yes.
click
There's a link from
when you
one to my other
from one to the
website.
other. Yeah, and there's links to
Yeah,
all your academic publishings and things,
yeah,
so people need to go and check it out
yeah,
and
yeah.
have a look. But definitely check out the podcast. I'd love to have you back another time because I feel
Oh,
as though we
that's
could
sweet.
more than likely speak for another
Oh,
5
dear.
hours and still not scratch the surface
You
of
know,
all
maybe
the things
we
that
could
you and I have to
our
talk
next
about.
topic our next topic could be the illusion of time and space.
Ah,
Now
yeah.
that will take us hours, hours, hours.
Let's do that. I mean,
Yeah,
well, all we have to do it you have to just I guess for me, I feel this every day because I speak to people across the world. Now
yeah,
you're in Rome, I'm in
right,
Adelaide, and
yeah,
here it's like 3 minutes to 10 PM.
right,
For you,
and
it's 2
it's
PM
2
there?
2 PM, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So and then I speak to people in the US, now it's
mhm,
like 9 o'clock in the morning.
right.
People are
Yeah,
people are
yeah.
getting up and
Yeah, yeah.
and
Mm,
they don't care. It's
yeah,
morning for them. They don't
yeah,
understand that it's 10 o'clock at night for me, 10:30,
yeah,
11 o'clock at night,
and
or
traveling
6:30 in
around
the
the
morning.
world, constantly traveling around the world, I wonder if we get old, can you grow old?
Well, maybe.
Another podcast, another
Is
episode.
that why is that why everybody says that I look younger than 41 years old? Because I've been going backwards in time all the time?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I always gain a
I've
day
been
when I
traveling.
go to the US.
I've been traveling the wrong way then.
You're going forward, you're going the wrong way. You can't go forward in time, you have to go backwards.
Thank you so much, Jesse, for this invitation. It was
Claudia,
a
it's been a
pleasure
pleasure.
to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Please, everybody, check out the podcast, Multiple Voices, everywhere you
Thank
get your
you.
podcasts. Have a look at the website as well. It's been a pleasure. Please come back. It would be so cool.
I will. Bye-bye.
Thank you.